Welcome back everyone, it's your boy Big Man, Big Books. Today I'd like to talk about Stephen King's short novel, Dolores Claiborne. The sheets had to be hung perfectly. She'd go to that window year in and year out and yell at me, "6 pins now, Dolores. You mind me now, I'm counting." And my eyes are just as good now as they ever were. When Vera Donovan is found dead at the bottom of the stairs, the police want to question her housekeeper, Dolores Claiborne. And Dolores does have a confession to make, but it's not what the police are expecting to hear as they listen to her life story. A story which harkens back to the abusive marriage and the suspicious death of her husband in a small Maine community of Little Tall Island. Dolores Claiborne has a story to tell, and you'd better pay attention or else. I picked up this book not knowing really anything about the general plot other than what I'd read on the blurb of the book. Sort of one that I picked up years ago and I've had it, on the desk for a while, on my shelves for a while, but really more than that, I haven't really sort of thought about it, not really kind of researched into the book either, but I was on a bit of a whim and I kind of wanted to read a Stephen King book, and I thought, hey, you know what, I'll pick this up, it's not very long, and I am trying to get through Stephen King's back catalogue. I've read all the kind of major ones that you'd imagine, but the smaller books like this one I haven't really picked up very often. So before we get into it, let's talk a little bit about what the story is about. Dolores Claiborne is a point of view story from the perspective of Dolores Claiborne, who is an elderly woman, a mother and a widow, who is confessing to the murder of her late husband. The entire story is told in the perspective of a confession to the police and her reasons as to why she did what she did. Very straightforward premise. Very interesting, really intriguing from the offset. Let's talk about what I liked about the book. I really loved the POV kind of telling the story of her confessing to the murder. The writing style of that was really interesting, very much stayed, true to form in that respect. Felt like a really long, convoluted confession tape. I would even suggest in this instance, if you are wanting to pick this up, to give the audiobook a go, because that even then really takes it to the next level, down to little details like hearing the tape recorder going, her taking a glass of water, for a break, that sort of thing. Just feels like you're literally listening to a confession tape. If you are looking to pick this one up, I would definitely suggest, looking into the audiobook. I also really enjoyed the story as a whole. I think Stephen King's really incredible at writing people and motivations and reasons for doing what they do. Really painting people as not just as black and white, as good and bad. He's really good at kind of finding grey areas, which to me is far more interesting than just good, evil. It was really, really a solid story in that respect. A lot of people in the past have sort of criticised Stephen King for his writing with women, and I would honestly feel as though this is proof that he can write women really well. The relationships Dolores has with several women within the storyline is so intriguing and different. Nothing's really the same. And in true Stephen King fashion, he can make things very scary, even when they're not particularly scary, just through the power of symbolism and just good old-fashioned amazing writing. Moving on to what I maybe didn't really like as much. All in all, this is a great story. There isn't really anything I dislike. I don't think it's his best book. I do think it's a really good story, and it's a very different approach to what he normally does. But some of the themes in the book is a bit hard-hitting, I won't lie. If you're easily sort of triggered by, these are all things that have a part of the story, to be honest with yourself. Like, there's not a way of sort of beating around the bush, and it was very difficult reading it now, myself as a father, reading it when discussing like child abuse. It was difficult, to be honest. It was quite upsetting at times, and it's something that maybe in the past, prior to having a child myself, I would have not really thought too deeply on it. But it was tough. It was a tough read. I'd be ignorant to suggest otherwise. I think if you're going into this book, be aware that it's not all sunshine and roses like any Stephen King book. They're normally There's some quite strong themes, and it doesn't really beat around it. It's very honest with its story in terms of what's going on. So just, as I say, word of warning in terms of those sorts of themes. If they are something that is going to really bother you, then I certainly would say skip this book. It's a really compelling story, regardless. So I would definitely suggest picking up Dolores Claiborne, but it's worth, just being aware of the themes in general. In terms of it relating to other Stephen King works, this is a very self-contained story. So if you're going into this expecting, references to other Stephen King works, then you're going to be disappointed. It's very much a self-contained story. Obviously, there's a lot of similarities to his other works. The fact it's set in kind of like an island off of the coast of Maine. Very, very similar settings to a lot of his other stories, but in general, there's not really too much kind of Easter eggs as such like there would be in other books. If you know Stephen King books, you know that there's a lot of references to other stories within his books. So Dolores Claiborne really keeps things very self-contained and a very, very one-shot story. It's not a very long story either, so if you're looking for a longer read, maybe skip this out. But if you're looking for something to, get done over a weekend, absolutely pick this one up. Or even then, I think with it, the fact that the audiobook is just so fantastic. If you're going for a long car journey or you've got a trip planned, whack it on the radio. I think you'll really enjoy your trip, because it was a really solid performance from the voice actors and the production team behind the audiobook. Overall, Dolores Claiborne was a fantastic read. Fantastic listen, I should say, and I'm going to give this a solid 7 out of 10. Not one of Stephen King's best works. It's definitely not, It or Pet Sematary, but as a story that was a bit different to what he normally does, I thought it was a really solid read, and it's a really good, actually, jumping on point, I would suggest, for some people. If you were kind of unsure about some of his books, it may be worth picking this one up, because it's a nice, easy kind of, like I say, a listen or a nice, easy read. You can get it done over a weekend, and it's a bit straightforward. You don't need to have read, every single one of his books to understand what's going on. Overall, I thought it was a fantastic story with a really kind of heartfelt ending in respect of kind of the overall message of family and what we would do for family. That being said, I would recommend, due to the intense nature of some of the themes throughout the story, that you go in with a pinch of salt in terms of whether or not this book will be for you. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate your time. Take care. Goodbye.